Dory, hello. It is the middle of April 2023 and today's video is about networking and in many respects it's in praise of that wonderful company called MicroTik. MicroTik is a networking company which is specifically one of my favourites because they make very keenly priced products which can really do everything that you need usually. You've just got to figure out how to do it. So in the olden days, I had a router like this, which is a HAP AC router, but MicroTik recently brought out a product that's almost identical to this called a HAP AX. And the AX router series is significantly better and faster, and it has Wi-Fi 6 networking. But they've changed the way that they have the interface between the networking and the unit. And they're now using something called Wi-Fi Wave 2. So Wi-Fi Wave 2 did not support the networking terminology that I wanted to enable to join these two devices together, multiple of these devices together, to extend my network to places that don't have a Ethernet socket. So let's just see what we had and what we have come to today. So in the old days, we had a HAP AC router, and that's got a number of Ethernet sockets here. And we have an Ethernet coming in, and that's got the internet on it. And that's coming from, let's say, our rather large home network. So somewhere along this network is the boundary router. And that is connected via a fibre line to the interweb. So the internet comes into this boundary router through some other routers and eventually gets into the lounge onto this HAP AC router. Now from there we need to get across the lounge to a wall which doesn't have any internal networking, because we do have Ethernet in most parts of the house, but not on this side of this room. And wirelessly, it would go to another HAP AC router. Okay. But this was so that was how it used to work. And we would use a protocol called NV2, which was a MicroTik proprietary protocol to make a wireless link from here to here. I don't know if I did it correctly, but I managed to do it. So then we had another upgrade to the network, which was we have in the lounge now, we have a HAP ACX, and this uses Wi-Fi 6, but that has this new protocol. So the protocol is called Wi-Fi Wave 2, and I'm going to show you that protocol on the interface. So we can see that the interface here, we've got the interface Wi-Fi 1 and Wi-Fi 2, but this does not support the NV2 protocol, and so everything fell apart. So instead of doing that, I was actually, instead of doing that on the boundary router, we fed into a mains socket a Ethernet extender. So this is a TP link. So you've got Ethernet coming in here, and then somewhere else in the house where there's a power socket in the patio, we have another TP link with an Ethernet coming out. And this is effectively linked using the mains wiring of the house. So that was fine, but what we wanted to do was to get it working again. And that's what the subject of this video is all about, because now we have got it working again. So what do we have today? We have, I'm going to have to use a new pen. We've got the boundary router. With a fibre interface. We've got an extensive home network off which there's a HAP ACX. Now it's got two radios, it's got two wireless radios. It's got a Wi-Fi 6 radio and a Wi-Fi, I call it Wi-Fi 4 radio. And we're using this radio to now wirelessly go to the HAP AC2. So this is an example of a HAP AC2 here. So this is plugged into the wall socket with the mains. And then out of that, so the wireless connection is made between these 2 points. And out of one of these Ethernet sockets, we are now able to feed an Ethernet device. In fact, it's a security camera. So we have it all working again. The question is how? And it's done in the following way. So we have this router divided into 2 parts. We have the Ethernet interfaces 1 to 5. I'm using interface 5. And I'm saying that interface 5, he's got an interface of 10.0.0.1. But he also runs a DHCP server on that port. So anything that connects to that port will get an IP address. So the camera, when it's plugged in, will get an IP address of 10.0.0.xyz. But that DHCP server address here is separate from the inbound addresses which the Wi-Fi network have. So we've got a Wi-Fi network here, and that Wi-Fi network needs to be connected to here. So we have different Wi-Fi networks in the house. For example, we have a IoT network, which is an insecure network. Let's call it the 192.168.7.x network. And we have to make a wireless connection between this Wi-Fi radio here and this Wi-Fi here. And that's what we do in the MicroTik world by using what's called a station. So with the SID called Fred here, SSID called Fred, we create a station interface here. And we also say we're going to create the SSID here called Fred. And we create a security profile where we give the same password to this SSID here. So we've got, this guy's got the SSID called Fred. This guy's got the SSID called Fred. This, for example, has got the password 12345. This has also got the password 12345. But this is defined as an access point, and this is defined as a station. And when you set those two things up, these two will talk to each other. And furthermore, you can either give this Wi-Fi network a specific IP address on this network, which you need to do, or if this whole network is subject to a DHCP server, not this one, this Wi-Fi network has a DHCP server attached to it here, then it will get the address from here. It's your choice. You can set the IP address up statically. For example, this was 7.100. This could be 7.101. And then this guy will be on the internet. Of course, you need to set up the IP address, you need to set up the DNS server, and you need to set up the static route. Okay. So it's more convenient if this will get its credentials from the DHCP server that it finds when it binds to that IP4 address. And that is how we do it. Now don't forget, this guy here is using something called the Wi-Fi Wave 2 interface. And that does not have this NV Extreme protocol, which the old HAP AC routers have. So on this side, even at the latest firmware levels, I do have the possibility of the NV Extreme, but of course I don't have anything to talk to. So I rely on not using that, and I just use the standard protocol where this is a station. Okay, Dari, so we are going to review the technical configurations between the source and target MicroTik routers, and we're going to look at the HAP ACX, which is the source router, and that's connected to our IoT network infrastructure at home. And it's a fancy router in the sense that it's the latest generation, so it's got these two faster speed networks than before. It's got a 5 gigahertz ACX network, and it's got a secondary network which is running at regular 2.4 gigahertz, and that has much less options and much less potential for speed. The reason we've upgraded is to give our guests network, so when someone comes to the home, they have an isolated guest network onto which they can do whatever they want, but they can't access our other infrastructure and let's say maliciously mess anything up. So I wanted to just show you what the new Wi-Fi Wave 2 looks like, because it doesn't look like the same as the next target machine I'm going to show you. So this is the higher speed AX network interface, and this is Wi-Fi 2 network, which contains the 2.4 gigahertz network. So I double click on that. These are all the ports on the device, by the way. So there's a bridge port, and in MicroTik, a bridge is just an amalgamation of other ports. So on this particular device, I've said let the bridge, which I call 00 bridge, so it sorts nicely, contain all of these other ports. So the bridge is literally, it's a sort of software bridge of all of these other ports, both Wi-Fi's and all Ethernets. Let's look at, this is the second Wi-Fi interface, so this is the slower interface. So here you'll see there's a number of tabs, and you can change this to anything that you want. The mode is access point, only access point or station mode, and we'll just go through the configuration. Now you can actually have some of these things in separate files, but for an easy peasy simple configuration, I found out the best thing to do is not to have it in separate files. So for example, the SSID is set to guests, chains is how much of the hardware you want to use, and you can select 0 and 1, for example, or just 0. There are all sorts of other options like the country setting here. But basically, to get things working on Wi-Fi Wave 2, I've specified as little as possible. So with the channels, you have to specify the type of band that you've got. Here are the options. So N is a faster networking than G, and AX would not be compatible with security equipment that I've got connected or other devices in the house. The channel width, again, MicroTiks are amazing in that you can specify the shape of the actual curve of frequency as well as the exact frequencies that you're broadcasting on. So I've got a primary frequency, 2442 megahertz, and this is the 2552 secondary frequency. So nominal is 2.4 gigahertz, but we can actually specify the actual frequency around that. In the security, we have, again, this could also be in a separate file, in which case you put a security file profile there, but you don't need to use a security profile. And you can see that we're using WPA2 PSK authentication. New in Wi-Fi Wave 2 is we've got these WPA3 here. So that's all new. There's not much else to say. These are all defaults. And you can actually see the traffic that's pootling around on that Wi-Fi network. So that is the source HAP ACX device. And now we're going to go to the target device, which is the MicroTik router to which a wireless connection is being made. So the first thing we said is that we are going to configure the wireless interface here to have an IP address, and we do that by going into the DHCP client on the target MicroTik called Patio, and we try and add a client in, and we say what interface is going to receive that IP address. It's going to be the wireless LAN. That's in my tokenization, it's interface number 6 called WLAN24, and it's also going to it's going to request from the DHCP server a default route. So you're going to see that we've created also a DHCP server, but not on that interface. We're using a DHCP server to send IP addresses out to the things that this MicroTik is connected to. So look at all the addresses. We've got interface 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which are all grayed out because they are not enabled, they're all disabled. I've enabled a single Ethernet LAN, which is the Ethernet LAN number 5. And it's on that LAN interface which has an address. So that address here has got a 10 address. And we've set up a DHCP server operating on that port so that anything gets plugged into that port will also get an address. So you can see I've plugged something in this case it's a camera, and today it's been given this address. If we look at the wireless interface here, you'll see that this is now different. This is the old-fashioned MicroTik wireless interface. And you can see these tabs do not exist on the new interface. You see that the 5 GHz interface is grayed out, and the only thing that's operating is the 2.4 GHz network. If we double click on that, go to the front of it, you'll see we've called it interface number 6, WLAN24. In the wireless tab, in advanced mode, we have said it's a N network only. I'll show the choices. We've said it's a station so that it's going to talk wirelessly. This is the target. The source is the HAP ACX router. We've made the channel width exactly the same as the source, and we've made the frequency auto. You can see there's lots of other options in MicroTik land, such as super channel, which allows you to set the shape and the frequency here. Without being super channel, you wouldn't be able to set it like this. We've also said no country set, so we're not bound by the UK standards. We can choose any international standard. So that is the definition of this wireless interface. So if we go back to our memories, we'll see that this is the target device. And by the way, on a MicroTik device, you can of course just do an export. So I did an export before, and this is this configuration you can see of these interfaces here. So you'll see that you can either configure this via the GUI, or if you were to go for a terminal device here, you can type in these commands at the terminal. And just by typing export at the terminal, you can export the entire configuration of your router. So here's some of the lines that you could just type in. So this would be the command to add an address pool to the DHCP server. So going from 10.002 to 10.0054. This is saying create a DHCP server on that physical Ethernet interface, so that anything gets plugged into interface 5 will get a DHCP address of these guys here. Then we're saying we need to NAT the interface. So between the interface that the camera's plugged into, this is interface number 5, he's going to get a 10.00 something interface. But that camera needs to reach the internet. And in order to do that, it has to be NATed, network address translated. So there's a command which we have said, and I'll show you how to do it on the actual device as well. So we said here, do a masquerade, which is Linux or MicroTik speak for network address translation. It's a source NAT, and we're going to take any interface here and NAT it. Now, I don't exactly understand how it knows that this is the outbound interface. It's very clever. I thought I would have to put the outbound interface into the rule, but I did not have to do so. Let's show you the interface here. IP firewall. And you'll see I've got nothing except in the NAT. I double click on this rule, which is what I've changed, what I set up. The general, it says, what chain is it? It's a source NAT rule. And this says inbound from any interface of 10.0.0.0/24 bits wide, which is the network. Then the action is masquerade. And it's very clever that it seems to understand it's going to output it, it's going to NAT it to the address range that is on the other interface, which is here. So that's the clever bit. I don't quite understand how it's doing it, but I'm very glad that it is doing it. Okay, that's it basically. So we're back to the original position, which is that the two wireless routers, so the two routers are now connected wirelessly. I don't need to use the Ethernet over power line adapters anymore. And I can plug in this security camera to a place where I only have power. I don't have an Ethernet, a wide Ethernet connection. Okay, thanks for watching, Darren.